Let's talk about the BS that EA recently pulled, which highlights that there is no such thing as safety in the games industry. No matter if you, as developers, as a collective, create an epic failure of a product or an epic success of a product, no matter what, there's a good chance you might be laid off. So today's story concerns Battlefield 6, a title that, no doubt, is an incredible success. I mean, looking at Steam charts here, looking at the all-time peak numbers on Steam of 747,440 players, and the fact that even now, months after launch, it's retaining tens of thousands of players. Looking at the sales figures, I mean, we learned that Battlefield 6 sold a record-shattering 7 million copies in 3 days, which made it the best launch for Battlefield in history. And then 2 months later, we would learn that Battlefield 6 has surpassed roughly 20 million copies sold. And with this being a game that was sold at that premium price point of $70, just from base game sales alone, this game made a shit ton of money. And this being a live service on top of that, it means that all the microtransactions and monetization elements included in Battlefield 6 made money for EA as well. So this is a game that no doubt generated billions of dollars in revenue. More than made its money back. It's considered a commercial success. So much so, in fact, that ultimately by the end of 2025, Battlefield 6 ended as being the best-selling game of 2025, even surpassing Call of Duty for the first time in history. Surpassing Call of Duty is practically unheard of until Battlefield 6 came along. Now, in recent weeks, we have seen the user reception surrounding Battlefield 6 dip. Once upon a time, this mostly positive game is now sitting on Steam at a mixed score of 65%. There's an article right here from IGN that explains all of the woes that people have had with updates surrounding the game that either broke certain aspects, that implemented like AI-generated content, and just the mishandling of some of the content that has released, and some of the balancing issues that people have experienced, or some of the gameplay tweaks that people didn't like. So sure, recently, from a community sentiment standpoint, there have been some rough tidings when it comes to Battlefield 6, but with all that said and done, developers ultimately did ship a massively record-breaking successful product. But even all that wasn't enough for EA, with IGN reporting that EA has laid off staff across all Battlefield studios following the record-breaking Battlefield 6 launch. This is something that IGN itself learned based on sources that they spoke to, highlighting that teams within EA who have been affected include Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive Studios, all of who did contribute to Battlefield 6's development. Apparently, these layoffs, according to EA, are part of a realignment across the Battlefield studios. While all 4 studios will remain operational, the layoffs will ultimately impact a variety of teams across multiple studios and offices. And then here we have a direct quote from an EA spokesperson who spoke to IGN stating, "We have made select changes within our Battlefield organization to better align our teams around what matters most to our community. Battlefield remains one of our biggest priorities, and we're continuing to invest in the franchise, guided by player feedback and insights from Battlefield Labs." I just don't know how there can be a scenario where a game like Battlefield 6 comes along, shatters the records that it does, sells at the volume that it does, monetizes at the volume that it does, and it's still cause to lay off the developers who made that product remotely possible, who brought EA all of these lucrative profits. If this is the team that has brought you this level of success, then you should be doing everything in your power to make this team happy, to retain them, and ensure that they feel safe and comfortable in their work environment. Because this is the team that could make you the next mega hit with all the institutional knowledge that this team garnered by working together on this specific title. This is just such short-term thinking that constantly gets publishers like EA and Ubisoft and those in a similar level of AAA publishing in trouble because of this short-sighted thinking. Say what you want about Nintendo, but the one thing that company is always praised for is the way they treat their employees and the way Nintendo values institutional knowledge and want to retain as many of its developers as possible, because they know that if they get a team that works together and you encourage that team to keep working together and keep that team happy and just allow them to keep doing their thing, they will make you banger after banger. There's a reason why Nintendo releases are so consistent in in the level of high quality that they achieve. And with Battlefield 6, when you're looking at a game that sold at $70 a pop and basically made around $1.4 billion in revenue, if you multiply the 20 million in sales estimate by $70, and that's of course not assuming all of the additional factors like regional pricing and discounts and sales and whatnot. The fact that you can even approach a figure like $1.4 billion in revenue highlights just how much freaking money this game made. You can absolutely afford to keep the entirety of the Battlefield 6 team, and that's excluding all of the monetization that Battlefield 6 managed to profit off of. There is no good reason to lay off any developer in this scenario, except if you're just that freaking petty and greedy that you have to cut costs for short-term financial guidance that doesn't even consider the long-term damage that this does. When developers can't even feel safe in shipping a successful product, what will inspire talented people who want their work to be respected and just to be treated humanely to continue working on video games? Like, this is the kind of shit that will bleed talent in the games industry. And yeah, suffice to say that on social media, the backlash against EA for this baffling move has been pretty intense. Right here we have a top comment from Looney who says, the gaming industry is the most successful entertainment industry in the history of our species, and it is being continually run into the ground by the greediest humans in the history of our species. Here's somebody else who summarized all this in this very brief fashion. This is what being in the games industry is like. Make a bad game, gets fired. Make a good game, gets fired. Doesn't matter. People like Matty Place here are highlighting some of the stats that highlight what an incredibly successful launch and product this was. The fact that there's layoffs of any kind with even this level of success highlights how bleak things are in the games industry for developers who just deserve to be treated better and be in a better, safer feeling working environment, who deserve to be rewarded for helping ship a successful product, and who deserve to retain the talent and the teams that make these products possible and to keep doing what they do. And yeah, all of the top comments basically highlight this industry that no matter what you do, you have to go find yourself a new job. You will get fired, whether you make a flop or a bestseller. Here's somebody else highlighting the realities of the consequences of this level of short-sighted thinking on the part of CEOs when you aren't even safe after launching a successful game anymore. What these stupid executives don't realize is when you lay people off, a huge knowledge base walks out the door with them, and a lot of the time, the people remaining have to essentially start from scratch because they aren't equipped to deal with the enormity of AAA game development out of lack of experience. And I know that there are some qualms with the current state of Battlefield 6, and those are absolutely valid, but you need the developers to be able to fix the issues surrounding Battlefield 6, and so many of the reasons why game design and, game integrity ends up going awry is because of higher up executive mandates that has nothing to do with the developers who get laid off for just doing their jobs, and for ultimately bringing to life a product that a lot of people have enjoyed and continue to enjoy, and that has made corporations like EA a boatload of money. Now, something worth highlighting is this article from July of 2025, when it was reported that EA is seemingly expecting Battlefield 6 to have 100 million players, 3 times more than the series' bestseller. What can you even say to that? And that right there is a really important thing to highlight. No matter how successful a product seems, ultimately what real success is defined by the executives who run the whole ship and who set the expectations of what a product needs to do in order to be deemed successful in the eyes of the corporation. It's not about whether the game made enough money, whether it made more money than its budget, whether it made a profit. It's about whether it made the level of profit that these corporations aim to achieve because of just the sheer level of greed and the appeal to investors that they are constantly engaging in. We've seen this time and again, games that have sold a certain number of millions of copies and a level of volume that makes one think, oh my gosh, that is a really successful game. And then months down the line, a report comes out that says this company was disappointed with that game's sales despite having sold millions upon millions. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? It's because of those internal expectations that are just so unreasonable and impossible to reach, even when you're the best-selling Battlefield game, when you've sold 20 million units in 2 months, when you're breaking records, beating Call of Duty, when even that doesn't meet the expectations that corporations and their executives have set. then the problem isn't the product and its sales volume, it's the freaking executives and their idiotic mindset of this is what a game needs to achieve to be deemed successful when it's the most unreasonable ask. It's stuff like this that makes me look at things like Steam charts for new releases, new live services like Marathon, which looking at things now a couple days after its launch, you can see actually that the player retention surrounding Marathon is really impressive. This is actually a live service that is not doing poorly at all, but the question isn't about whether from our perspective it's successful, it's about whether from Sony and PlayStation's perspective it's successful. Because Sony spent $3.6 billion acquiring Bungie and have high hopes and expectations for a game like Marathon. It's not that these figures are bad, like any reasonable person could look at this and go, actually, this is doing pretty well, like pretty decently. It's not the runaway success of something like Destiny or, Slay the Spire 2, which recently came out to like all-time peaks of over 500,000 players. But you can tell that it's a very viable live service, but whether Sony sees it that way, that's a whole other question because of the high expectations that they will set for this game because of the amount of money that they spent on Bungie, and ultimately corporations and executives are about making money and pleasing investors. And on that perspective, that's where I'm like, is Marathon doing enough? Is the all-time peak of 88,337 players, does that indicate enough sales volume and enough player engagement and monetization that it will keep Sony happy specifically from their greedy corporate mindset? I don't look at Steam charts numbers in the hopes that a game will fail. I look at them through the lens of like, what will the corporations think of these numbers? And from that perspective, how viable is this game? And with Sony, recall that recently they shut down Bluepoint despite the fact that they shipped some of the most successful remakes, and you can tell they had every potential as developers to be one of the greats. Sony shut them down anyway, despite the fact that it was Sony who set them up for failure by assigning them a God of War live service, which Bluepoint of all developers had no business being in charge of, given their speciality in remakes and single-player experiences. Like, these kinds of decisions drive me nuts. When a game that's doing this well through Steam charts isn't safe from layoffs and whatnot, can a game like Marathon be deemed safe? Like, can we expect that there won't be layoffs at Bungie with these numbers that, while, sustaining players really well and showing promise, does Sony care about the promise that it shows versus the amount of short-term profit that it brings? Those are the questions that have to be asked, because when a game like Battlefield 6, when a success like that doesn't even give developer safety, then nothing will. It's just bleak, man. Like, it's the developers who help bring these games to life. It's the developers who make this medium that we love possible, and the level of mistreatment that they constantly face, the complete lack of safety that they constantly face, even after shipping the best-selling game of the year with microtransactions and live service components at that. I can't wrap my head around it at just the level of greed and stupidity to make these kinds of decisions in this way. That's just one man's take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on Battlefield 6 and the current status of the game and the layoffs surrounding it despite its massive success in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.